Chapter 19. Rhythm as a Shield. Emotional turbulence rarely arrives as a single overwhelming force. More often, it accumulates. It gathers in the small gaps where the mind never quite closes what it opened. A tense conversation that ends without resolution, a task that is started and abandoned, an email that lingers unanswered because it carries social risk, a decision postponed because it feels heavy. Each of these leaves a residue. The residue is not dramatic, yet it changes the texture of the day. The mind becomes slightly tighter, slightly more vigilant, slightly less willing to engage. By afternoon, the person feels worn, and they attribute that wear to workload, when it is often the result of unprocessed accumulation. Rhythm is one of the few defenses that works quietly enough to last. People often think of rhythm as a preference, as a personality quirk, as the nice-to-have structure of people with stable lives. In reality, rhythm is protective. It is a way of preventing emotional turbulence from becoming ambient. When the day has predictable cycles, fewer things remain suspended. The mind receives regular signals that something has started, something is in motion, something has ended. It is not forced to hold everything open at once. This reduces internal noise. It reduces the need for constant self-management. It keeps emotional weather from turning into climate. A predictable cycle is not a rigid schedule. It is a pattern of return. Return is what keeps turbulence from accumulating. Without return, the mind treats everything as unfinished. It keeps scanning. It keeps carrying. It keeps revisiting. With return, even unfinished work has a place to live. It is contained. The mind can loosen its grip because it trusts there will be another contact point. Many people live without this trust. Their days are shaped by interruption, by reactivity, by inconsistent starts and inconsistent stops. Under those conditions, the mind cannot relax because it does not know when it will have another chance to engage what matters. It keeps everything present to avoid losing it. This is one way emotional turbulence becomes chronic. The nervous system is kept in a state of low-level preservation. Rhythm interrupts preservation by creating dependable boundaries. Boundaries are not only social, they are temporal. A worker who has no predictable cycles is always vulnerable to spillover. A morning problem becomes an all-day problem. A small conflict becomes a background hum. A task that should take an hour becomes a cloud that follows them. There is no contained place to put it, so it stays in the mind. When the mind carries too much, it becomes reactive. Reactivity creates more turbulence, and the accumulation continues. Rhythm is a shield because it reduces the surface area of the day that is exposed to chaos. Predictable cycles do something else as well. They reduce the need for continuous decision-making. A chaotic day is full of micro-decisions. What should I do next? Should I respond to this now? Should I switch to that? Should I push through or take a break? These decisions are not always conscious, but they are continually being made. Each one requires the mind to negotiate with itself. Negotiation invites emotion. Emotion argues. The day becomes a running debate. Debate is exhausting, and exhaustion makes the mind more vulnerable to emotional interference. A rhythmic day removes many debates by making the next move familiar. This is where rhythm differs from motivation. Motivation is an internal spike. Rhythm is an external containment. Motivation can vanish suddenly. Rhythm continues because it is not dependent on feeling. The person enters the work at a certain time, closes something at a certain time, checks messages within a certain window, returns to deeper work in another window. These actions do not have to be defended every day. They simply occur. In this way, rhythm becomes a form of emotional insulation. It prevents mood from deciding what happens next because the pattern is already in motion. Patterns are comforting to the nervous system, not because they are pleasant, but because they are knowable. Knowability reduces vigilance. Vigilance is one of the primary generators of emotional turbulence. A vigilant system is constantly scanning for what might be missed, what might go wrong, what might demand immediate attention. It treats uncertainty as threat. Rhythm reduces uncertainty about sequence. Even when the work itself is complex, the frame is stable. The mind knows when it will enter, when it will exit, when it will return. This reduces the internal urgency that often has nothing to do with the task and everything to do with fear of losing control. The shield is not the schedule itself. The shield is the reduction of unpredictability in your own behavior. Many people live inside unpredictable self-relationship. They do not know when they will focus, when they will drift, when they will overwork, when they will avoid. They might have external obligations, but their internal life is inconsistent. This inconsistency creates anxiety because the mind cannot rely on itself. It does not trust that it will return to the work later, so it keeps the work present now, even in moments where it is not being engaged. This constant carrying creates fatigue that looks like stress. Rhythm builds trust with yourself by making return dependable. Dependable return is what prevents emotional turbulence from settling into the background. A difficult conversation can be acknowledged and then placed into a later window for thought or action. A complex decision can be staged across a predictable sequence rather than being wrestled with continuously. An unfinished task can be held without anxiety because there is a known re-entry point. This is how rhythm becomes a container. Containers do not remove difficulty, they keep difficulty from leaking everywhere. Leakage is what makes modern work psychologically expensive. When a day has no cycles, everything leaks. Messages leak into deep work leaks into family time, family tension leaks into meetings leak into the evening. The person is always half in something else. Half presence becomes the default mode. Half presence is not only less effective, it creates a chronic sense of strain because the mind is never fully allowed to inhabit one domain. The nervous system experiences this as constant unfinishedness. Rhythm reduces unfinishedness by making endings real. Endings are not always completion, they are boundaries. A block ends even if the task does not. The mind learns that it is allowed to pause without losing the thread. This learning is one of the most important things rhythm provides. Without it, people keep going long after their attention has degraded because stopping feels dangerous. They continue not because continuing is productive, but because they do not trust that they will return. They fear that if they stop, the task will disappear into the chaos of the day. This fear creates the kind of overwork that is not disciplined, but anxious. Rhythm replaces anxious persistence with deliberate continuity. Deliberate continuity is steadier and less emotionally costly. It allows the person to engage deeply in contained periods and then release without guilt because release is part of the pattern. The release is not an indulgence, it is a structural element. A mind that never releases becomes brittle. Brittleness increases reactivity. Reactivity increases turbulence. Rhythm prevents brittleness by incorporating predictable decompression. Decompression is often misunderstood as leisure. In practice, it is simply the nervous system being allowed to stand down. A rhythmic life offers the system repeated moments where it can stand down without fearing that something will be missed. This is not achieved by telling yourself to relax. It is achieved by making the environment and schedule predictable enough that standing down feels safe. Safety here is not comfort, it is the absence of constant threat cues. When the system has fewer threat cues, emotional turbulence has less fuel. The protective effect of rhythm is most visible when something unexpected happens. Unexpected events are inevitable. A crisis arises, a meeting is added, a family issue interrupts the day. In an unstructured life, unexpected events collapse everything because there is no underlying pattern to return to. The day becomes purely reactive, the mind loses its foothold. In a rhythmic life, unexpected events are still disruptive, but they do not erase the entire day. There is a known frame that remains. The person can respond and then return, not because they are unemotional, but because the structure makes return possible. The rhythm functions like a spine. It allows flexibility without collapse. This is the deeper point. Rhythm is not about control, it is about resilience. It is the difference between a life that can bend under stress and a life that shatters into fragments. Fragmentation is emotionally expensive because it produces constant reorientation. The mind spends its energy not on work, but on figuring out where it is. Rhythm reduces reorientation because it keeps the basic coordinates stable. Stable coordinates reduce noise.
Noise is not only distraction. Noise is also the emotional agitation that arises when the mind cannot find its place. When the day has no clear cycles, the mind becomes disoriented. It starts asking implicitly, "What am I supposed to be doing right now?" That question might not appear in language, but it appears in sensation. It appears as restlessness, as impatience, as a vague dissatisfaction that makes even small tasks feel irritating. People often attribute this to boredom or to lack of motivation. Often it is simply a lack of rhythm. The system is searching for a pattern and cannot find one. When it cannot find one, it creates its own, usually in the form of compulsive checking and reactive switching. These compulsions are attempts to regain orientation. The mind checks email to feel caught up. It checks messages to feel connected. It switches tasks to feel productive. These acts provide short relief, but they intensify fragmentation. Fragmentation increases emotional turbulence, and the person becomes trapped in the cycle of using distraction to manage the discomfort created by distraction. Rhythm breaks this cycle by making orientation available without compulsion. A predictable cycle does not need to be elaborate. It can be a consistent way of beginning work, a consistent way of entering deeper tasks, a consistent way of handling communication, a consistent way of closing the day. The details can vary widely. What matters is that the mind begins to sense that the day has a pattern that is larger than whatever mood happens to be present. The person is no longer reinventing their day each morning. They are inhabiting a structure that has already been built. Inhabiting a structure is psychologically cheaper than inventing one. The cheaper the day is psychologically, the more energy remains for actual work, and the less emotional turbulence accumulates. This is the quiet promise of rhythm. It does not eliminate stress, it prevents stress from spreading. It does not prevent difficult moments, it prevents difficult moments from turning into a diffuse climate that colors everything. A person with rhythm can have a hard hour without needing to have a hard day. That difference is enormous. It is the difference between a life where turbulence becomes destiny and a life where turbulence is simply weather. Rhythm is the shield that keeps weather from becoming the landscape, not through suppression, but through the consistent containment that allows attention to return to what is real, what is next, and what can be built even when the internal atmosphere is imperfect.